afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Assessment Reform Week at AQA. This is the Essential Subject session for Design and Technology. My name is Louise Atwood, for those of you who don't know me, and I am the Portfolio Lead for STEM subjects and the Subject Lead for Design and Technology, Engineering and Food Preparation and Nutrition. So here's a QR code for you to scan. If you wouldn't mind doing that, that would allow you to ask any questions throughout the session and respond to any of the polls that we've got during this presentation. Just give you a second to do that. Okay, so I'm here as part of Assessment Reform Week to talk you through everything you need to know all together in one place. Across this dedicated week, we're going to explore what these changes mean for learners, subjects, and schools. So far, you would have already seen on Monday that there's been a kick-off session looking at reform more generally and what it means for you. Yesterday, you will have seen via a video podcast what reform means for your schools. This was a real conversation with school leaders on what really matters now. And then today, we have our expert-led subject-specific webinars with subject-focused updates that will help you to answer some of the key questions and what this assessment reform could mean for you in the coming years. Then we've still got more to come in the rest of the week. So tomorrow is all about how we can support you with a look at all of the support available. And then on Friday, we'll be part of the Festival of Education, focusing on getting teachers like you involved in assessment reform with live teacher panels. So now, as you may or may not know, there are some timelines that have been shared, but just to give you a bit of an update to understand what's going on in the background, we're going to take a look at this. So there's a process that you may or may not be aware of, but essentially the educational reform is underway. It started with the curriculum and assessment review being published. And now the DfE are working on drafting subject content for different subjects. So there's lots of things currently happening in this space. It might seem quiet, but it's really not. We're super busy engaging with the DfE on the drafts for a number of different subject contents to ensure that they support good assessment and good teaching and learning. We've also begun engagement with Ofqual on assessment arrangements, and again are reflecting your feedback about what does and doesn't work well in current qualifications. Ofqual work on the assessment side of things, and the DfE work on the subject content side of things. We kind of sit in the middle of both, consulting with both of them. Now, as you may or may not know, the Curriculum and Assessment Review has laid out different changes for different subjects, but generally there are some key themes. So the first there that you can see on the right of the slide, the changes are to be evolutionary, not revolutionary, that we're looking at reduced exam time to deal with the cognitive load that students face, that there's to be a greater focus on financial education. We're looking at a more diverse and inclusive curriculum. We're thinking about triple science, digital skills, oracy, and the importance of creativity, which I think is something really close to our hearts as design and technology teachers. It's great to see that that's called out as a key area for improvement. Other highlighted areas were resits and how they might work in the future. And a discussion has started about coursework and NEA, calling out the fact that NEA is a key assessment tool for subjects like D&T. Again, this is really great to see. So all of these things are laid out, the process is underway, but there are some things still not confirmed by the DfE. One of those is the timing of the consultations. So there's not yet been confirmation on the exact timing of all of those consultations across the entire reform period. And they've also not yet confirmed the subjects in each phase. So having a look at the timeline for reform, we can let you know the general phases as per what's been released, but we still don't know yet which subjects fit into each. So if we're looking at the beginning phase, the consultation on the national curriculum is expected to begin in September of this year, with the final curriculum published in 2027, and first teach of the new Key Stage 3 curriculum in September 2028. So for Key Stage 4 and 5, so GCSE and A-level, of course, you will see that depending on phasing, some subjects will be available for first teaching in 2029, September 29. The second phase for those subjects will be available to start teaching in September 2030 for GCSE. And then that means, of course, that the new reformed assessments will begin from the summer of 2031, with the second phase in 2032. A-levels follow the same two-phase pattern. So the first phase of A-levels will be first taught in September 31, second in September 32, and then the first assessment being sat in 2033. So we're in consultation with the DfE, but currently they've not released their plans for which subject sits in which phase. But we do have an idea of when the first teach for the GCSEs will begin and when the first teach of the A-levels will begin. So we've kind of got something to work with there. Okay, so just opening up a quick poll on Slido then. If you can scan the QR code there or use the page that you opened up at the beginning of the presentation, you'll be able to see a poll that asks you right now on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you understand about what assessment reform could mean for you? I'll give you a second to have a go doing that. Okay, so now we have looked at reform kind of more broadly. Let's have a look at what that looks like in design and technology. So the curriculum and assessment review for D&T focused on the following 5 key areas, which may indicate areas of focus and potential change. So first of all, we've got developing design capability, and that's about embedding sustainability throughout the curriculum, including how to achieve sustainable solutions to design challenges. We're really, really pleased that that's a focus. Sustainability has always been a key feature in design and technology, but we're looking at how it might be embedded into the curriculum in a more authentic way. And I've seen some amazing work by many schools in doing this successfully in their lessons. The next one is preparing students for real-world contexts, explicitly teaching social responsibility and inclusive design. For anyone who knows me, you will already be aware that this is very close to my heart. At AQA, we've campaigned for the teaching of social responsibility to be part of the curriculum, and I'm so happy to see that this is in here. Once we know what the subject content looks like, we'll be able to give more information on how this might be delivered through our specifications. So watch this space. I think that's going to be really exciting. We've then got strengthening critical decision making. Students will develop practical and analytical skills, particularly around material selection and resource use. I think the really key thing here is having the time in classrooms to do this. It's a really important part of what you might call design capability, that students are able to understand materials enough to be analytical about where they use them. They need to have the time to explore those materials fully, experiment with them, and really understand how they work in order to be knowledgeable decision makers within a D&T context. We'll be advocating to make sure that the subject content allows enough time for this experimentation to actually happen in lessons. Hands-on experimentation remains central. Learners will apply their learning in meaningful ways through practical work that continues to be integral. What a relief. Again, this is something we've had to defend and really passionately. We believe that allowing students to work out solutions to problems by physically manipulating materials and objects is a really key part of our kind of core purpose in design and technology. And then supporting food and nutrition. Students will build life skills and be prepared for future careers in the food sector through the continued identity of GCSE food and nutrition. It's really reassuring that the CAR confirms GCSE food prep and nutrition will continue as its own separate qualification at Key Stage 4, rather than being folded into the wider design and technology entitlement. That discrete identity genuinely matters for the subject and for the students who choose it. The review is clear that the curriculum needs more detail and consistency in early key stages, so that Key Stage 3 builds secure practice and a strong grounding in nutrition and hygiene, for example, meaning that our GCSE teachers aren't always having to start from scratch. And there's a really welcome commitment to review the level 3 options for food science to strengthen the pipeline into higher education and careers right across the food sector, helping to address the skills shortages that the review highlights. We will definitely be keeping a close eye on that space. So now we're going to focus on a few key topic areas. So as mentioned at the start of the week, we're keen to hear your views so we can ensure that they are reflected in our conversations with the DfE and Ofqual. It's really important that we understand exactly what you guys really want from future qualifications so that we can relay that information. So through our discussions with you and insights from our teacher panels, we know that there are several key topics highlighted in the curriculum and assessment review and the government response that matters most to you. And today is an opportunity for you to share your perspectives. Okay, so the first of these key areas, one of the areas that we know needs some focus, is making sure we're not overloading the curriculum. The DfE's subject content means that there is a huge amount to cover in GCSE D&T, and we understand that this means that students currently have a lot of breadth and are not always able to spend time really embedding that knowledge and doing their own exploration around a topic. We understand the importance of building in time for students to experiment and ask questions, and strongly advocate for this within the curriculum. We know that currently we face a crisis in teacher recruitment and that this has an impact on classrooms. We also know that D&T often suffers from a squeeze in the timetable, and students are sometimes removed from lessons when it gets nearer to exam periods by other subjects like maths and English. This clearly has an impact on the time students have in lessons. We also recognise that we used to have multiple qualifications, of course, one for each material area. Combining these into one GCSE does have many advantages. We know that professional designers are rarely constrained by the material that they have to use, but attempt to solve problems through design, choosing the most appropriate solution in whatever material makes sense. However, we're also very aware that this does mean spending time upskilling students on a breadth of knowledge, which may then have an impact on their depth of learning. We recognise particular frustrations from teachers and students who would specialise in textiles, and we know that many would prefer to have their own qualification so that they can ensure the right depth of study. We're in discussion with the DfE about whether this is possible, but we haven't been given any indication of a decision on that yet. Most importantly, we know that D&T is a subject which is focused on experimentation. In order for students to really understand the materials they're using, there must be time in the curriculum for them to investigate their properties in a real sense. There's a huge difference between learning about the properties of materials and being able to repeat them in an exam, and having experience of playing with those materials so that you really understand how they tip. Okay, so our key message here. Oh, apologies. I'm just going to go back to the previous slide. We've got a poll on assessing the right things. If you wouldn't mind popping over to Slido again and answering for us the questions that are up on the screen there. Do you agree that the current GCSE is overloaded with content? And then what content do you think the DfE should remove from the subject content? Like I said before, it's really important that we're able to feed that information into the conversations that we have with the DfE and also with Ofqual. So it would be really helpful to know what your kind of thoughts are on that aspect. I'm just going to have a look at Slido while you do that and see what responses are coming through. Okay, please do feel free to add any of those responses into the Q&A, and I will move on to the next slide. Okay, so the next one is about inclusion and accessibility. So our key message here is that an inclusion and accessibility first mindset isn't just an add-on. It's how we make sure that every learner can show what they know and how we keep D&T deliverable in real schools. Access to D&T is already uneven. GCSE entries have unfortunately fallen by around 68% over the last decade. And the gap is sharpest along lines of disadvantage. So roughly 60% of schools with the most disadvantaged students entered no one for GCSE D&T, compared with about 17% of the least disadvantaged. At Key Stage 3, D&T also had the highest proportion of students who wanted to take the subject but couldn't. Ofqual's guidance on accessibility in assessment is about removing unnecessary obstacles, so an assessment gives a reliable picture of what a learner actually knows. So accessible language and layout, careful use of context and images, reasonable adjustments built in from the start, that kind of thing. The review also commits to reducing overall exam time, which should ease pressure on students who currently sit long papers with or without extra time. We don't yet know whether that will apply specifically to design and technology, but we do know that this burden will be reduced across the overall offer. On manageability, accessibility only works if a specification is genuinely deliverable in schools, of course. Teacher supply is a real constraint, like I previously mentioned. Only around a quarter of the target for new D&T teachers was met recently. So anything we advocate for has to be realistic, given staffing, timetable time, and resources. On the digital skills gap, the review is clear. We can't assume students are automatically digital natives. Digital literacy needs to be taught deliberately. We're currently conducting research at AQA to explore potential ways to help teachers embed digital literacy into the secondary curriculum, including the idea of a framework for digital literacy to help give people an overview of the relevant skills and knowledge that does need to be covered. In terms of the discussion for this slide, as you can see, we're asking the question, what does accessibility mean in terms of your design and technology classroom? So we'd really like to know what are the key areas that you would like us to focus on in terms of inclusion and accessibility. I'll give you a minute to put any information into Slido for us there. Okay, and let's move on. So D&T is one of the few places in the curriculum where students are able to apply their knowledge on a regular basis to solve genuine real-world problems. So relevance to the real modern world is really important. The DfE has committed to a focus on developing students' design capability, explicitly teaching social responsibility and inclusive design, which is something we've been advocating for passionately at AQA. According to the Design Council, the UK design economy contributes around 97 billion and is growing at roughly twice the rate of the wider economy. However, we know that most students won't become designers and many won't work in creative or engineering industries. More broadly, employers are crying out for creative problem solving, critical thinking, and adaptability. And every one of the students in our classes will become citizens, consumers, voters, perhaps parents, friends. That's exactly why the curriculum and assessment reviews focus on social responsibility and inclusive design feels so significant. Critical thinking and conscious consumerism is for everyone. From experience, we also know that teaching social responsibility can be deeply engaging for students, and relating a student's learning to their own lives can be really key. We know that when learners start to ask who a product was designed for, who was forgotten, design stops being neutral and becomes something real and personal. That sense of agency, the realization that they could be the ones to put these things right, is sometimes what hooks them. And we know that the technical skills tend to follow once they have a reason to care. As you probably can see, we're genuinely passionate about social responsibility and inclusive design in D&T. What we would like to know from you is, what changes do you think would make the curriculum relevant in the modern world? And also, how do you feel about teaching inclusive design and social responsibility? It'd be really interesting to know what you currently do about that, whether you are already teaching that kind of content, how you do it, and whether it's something that you're keen to do in the future. Again, I'll leave you a minute or so to input into Slido. Okay, and then our poll here is about how clear you feel you are on assessment reform at this stage. It'd be great if you wouldn't mind answering that poll. Okay, so we're going to move on to questions in a minute, but just before we do, I want to thank you for your time listening to that presentation. We really don't want this to be the last point that we hear from you or you hear from us. So we would really like to take the opportunity to ask you to join one of our teacher panels. So what scanning this QR code and signing up means is that you'll be able to share your experience in the classroom. You'll be able to signpost anything that you think is important. You'll be able to answer any subject-specific questions and just give us your insight in order to shape the long-term direction of our qualifications. Like I said, all the way through this, it's really important that we're able to kind of mirror your views with our conversations with Ofqual and the DFE. So if you sign up for the teacher panels, you'll get monthly surveys that are just 1 or 2 minutes to fill in. They're super quick. We're not going to ask for loads and loads of your time. We know and understand the time pressures that teachers are under, but we really do want to hear what you've got to say about some of these key themes. You can also talk directly to your D&T team here at AQA using the information on the screen. We've got a phone number there, an email address, and you can see everybody in our D&T team at the moment. Myself, Stephanie Oldfield, our product manager, and then we've got Kimberly and Dipti, who are our subject support managers. We're really keen to support you, so please do reach out if there's anything that we can help you with. Our team are always happy to chat about D&T engineering and food, and we have lots of free training and resources and support that we can offer you, whether this is support in our current specifications or whether it's when it comes to the new ones when they're launched. So please do reach out if there's anything we can help you with. We'll be providing you with everything that you need to make sure that you are successful when the new products are launched, and that those are successful qualifications for you and your school, and most importantly, of course, your students. So we're going to move on to the questions that have gone into Slido now, and I will do my best to answer some of those. Okay, so let's work through a couple of these. Just so if there are some that we can't answer at this stage, there's quite a lot that we don't yet know about reform. I will do my best to kind of collate those, and we'll be able to send out a Q&A sheet to you after the event. So how different do you anticipate the D&T specification being to what it currently is? Are we looking at teachers having to rewrite all of their curriculums or tweak them? Good question. So I think the DfE were really clear in saying that this was evolution, not revolution. They don't want it to be a massive change. I think people recognise the time pressure that teachers are under. I think it's about making some tweaks, and I don't think there is any appetite for making huge changes. However, we don't currently know yet what that subject content is going to look like. It's not been written yet. It will depend on what comes out of that, and really it depends on making sure that we advocate for your views. So if you can get in touch with us and tell us what you think you want, whether you want a massive change, whether you want something that is just a tweak, then we will be able to advocate for that opinion with the DfE. Also, of course, when those subject contents are made public, you will be able to give feedback directly to the DfE on those as well. So there will be an opportunity. The other thing to mention with that is that any changes that are made will be supported from an AQA point of view. So there is plans for us to be able to deliver lots of training to you in schools, lots of opportunities to work together, lots of resources that we will be able to publish to try to help you to make sure that is the smoothest transition that it can be. Okay, as this is a practical subject, why so much maths, especially at the level it's aimed at? Really good question. So that was something decided in the last round of reform by the DfE, the rule to have 15% maths in all D&T GCSE qualifications. It's something that we're advocating to change. So we've been quite clear with the DfE that we would like to remove that 15%. I think maths definitely has a place in design and technology, but we kind of use it where it's needed. So when we're making things, we will always, of course, use maths, whether that is in kind of technical drawings or whether that is in a more practical sense, kind of marking out pieces of material or working out how many we can fit into one larger piece, all kinds of different things. But what we want to try to do is have that embedded in the curriculum where it is relevant, as opposed to this 15% figure, which is very much kind of a forced figure that we have to meet each year. I think our view at AQA is that it is a practical subject. Maths is relevant to that, but it doesn't need to be a percentage amount. It doesn't need to be something that we have to kind of put into every exam paper. It should be part of the course, just like lots of other areas of the specification. Okay, so I'm concerned about the current specification regarding the breadth of knowledge required, but its superficial depth and lack of relevance at GCSE level. Will it improve with curriculum reform? As a textile specialist, I feel demoralised and I'm considering switching to an AD, I presume that's art and design curriculum instead. And somebody else mentioning underneath, is textiles going to be separate? So we have, like I mentioned before, been talking to the DfE about exactly that and suggesting that there might be a separate textiles qualification. However, we haven't had any indication that that is what's going to happen. We don't know one way or the other at the moment, but as soon as that is made public, we will of course let you know. It's a tricky one because, like I said in the presentation, we don't want to go down the route of having lots of different material areas again. I think we've moved away from that and it's been very successful. As a community of design and technology enthusiasts, I think it's really important that we kind of keep the integrity of design, and that we're teaching students that they solve a problem, that they respond to a brief, and that they do that through whatever material area is the most appropriate. However, I do completely recognise from a textiles point of view that material area is quite different, and that actually it's difficult to cover the depth of subject content that teachers want to cover and students want to cover in order to actually successfully deliver the textiles element while still covering lots of different material areas. So we are talking to the DfE about that concern, but like I say, no decision has been made yet on that. Okay, I'm just going to look down a little bit further and see if there are any more. Please do add any more questions to the Slido if there's anything else that you would like to add. Okay, there's something here about iterative design process and the skills like CAD and drawing not adequately recognised. That's an interesting point. I think I'd like to hear more about what you mean by that. CAD and drawing is certainly recognised in the specifications currently, but it'd be interesting to know how you would like that to be improved, certainly. So we've had somebody write about the advised curriculum time allocation. This is a really tricky one. So sorry, I'll read the question out. So one of the issues we've encountered in recent times is the lack of specific guidance regarding advised curriculum time allocation for GCSE and A-level specifications. Will this be addressed? So currently we have guided learning hours, which are written into our specifications. And these are a guide to how long the specification should take to deliver, but they are learning hours. They are not intended to cover things like taking the register, tidying away, that kind of thing, which takes a different amount of time in different settings, depending on the students that you're teaching. Yeah, it's very much dependent on different context as to how much time you need. We understand the battle that teachers have with trying to get enough curriculum time for design and technology. And we really want to support that battle. However, it is a bit of a balance, because what we don't want is senior management to say, oh, okay, well, that subject takes too much time, we're going to remove them from the curriculum. We know that numbers have dropped substantially over the last decade, and we want to make sure that we're not a difficult choice. We're passionate about design and technology, and we certainly believe that students have a right to be able to access that curriculum. So what we don't want to do is stipulate too much and then back SLT into a corner and then not allow them to take the qualification further, because that would be really detrimental to us as a subject. So it is a bit of a balancing act there. Okay, is the NEA going to remain 30 to 35 hours? That is a guide anyway. That's not something that we control. That's something that you can decide yourselves within your centres. And it really depends on the percentage that NEA ends up being. We at AQA believe that NEA is a really, really crucial part of the qualification, and the proportion of NEA in comparison to the rest of the subject content and the exam, we don't necessarily believe is absolutely correct at the moment. We would like to see an increase, if anything, in the NEA percentage. Really interested to see your views on that. Again, we used to be a higher percentage of NEA, didn't we, before the last round of reform? So we would like to go back to a higher percentage again, not necessarily the same one, but we would be looking to increase NEA time and also focus, I guess. When should we start thinking about rewriting schemes of work to reflect the changes? Certainly not yet. So we will need to be thinking about what's going to be in the subject content to start with. the best thing that you can do is wait for that subject content, the draft version, to come out whenever that might be, and then respond to that so that you can help form the kind of principles behind that subject content. When it gets to writing the specification, so once the subject content is approved and us as exam boards will start writing that subject content, writing that specification, at that point then we will also start thinking about schemes of work. So we will provide you with lots of resources to help support you through that journey. And I would certainly say you're a few years off writing schemes of work, so don't worry about that. Okay, why is the practical element worth so few marks? It makes it inaccessible to some students and reduces the enthusiasm for the subject and therefore intake. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's something that we were quite disappointed about in the last reform and would like to see improved. Just like I said before, I think the NEA is a really worthwhile activity, and at AQA we're kind of pushing for more time and more marks for that, including the making. I'm really passionate about the fact that making is a really valuable muscle to kind of work. You know, students who can physically manipulate materials and work things out by doing, that's a whole different pipeline of kind of intelligence that I think we really need to nurture as a community, as a country. And I strongly believe that that is something that is the real unique selling point of our subject. We're super passionate about the making aspect. It's not the whole subject. We certainly need to be doing lots of other things, but I think the practical element is a really key part of what makes us design and technology. And you're right, it really enthuses students. It allows them to do something a little bit different to the other lessons. It allows them to see their creativity kind of visually, and it's a really exciting part of the curriculum. I would be very pleased to see those marks increase. Okay, just having a look at some more of these. So yeah, lots of people talking about the NEA and the percentage of NEA, some suggestions that it could be 60% again. That would be really good. Yeah, and more people saying about the shift in weighting. So we've got a query about the support that we are going to be offering. So somebody said that they're beginning to worry about all the changes that are coming. How are we going to support them? I think this is a really good question, and we really want to make sure that we're capturing from you ways in which we can support you. So please do let us know. Currently, and we will continue to do these things, currently we offer all kinds of support. So if you have a departmental meeting and you would like us to dial in virtually, we can be there to answer any questions that you've got. You can book that by emailing us, and we can do that free of charge. We're also available to come and do face-to-face training, again, free of charge. We are available to answer any one-to-one questions. So we have availability for booking a Teams call with us to make sure that we can help you with any questions. We're launching all kinds of different programs to help ITT students, ECT, early careers teachers, and we are open to any suggestions about other ways that we might be able to support you. We've got lots and lots of resources out there, but really keen to hear what we're missing, and if there's anything that we can help you with. Will there be changes in the weighting of different areas of the course, for example, maths and science content? I've kind of answered that, I think, already. But yeah, we're advocating for the removal of the percentage of maths content. The science content, to be honest, we cover very, very easily. Most of our subject has a science link. And so we go well over the percentage for that in every paper. But the maths one, we would support the removal of that percentage, yes. Okay, really good question. What will happen with the use of AI within the NEA? Will there be guidance on how to monitor and regulate this? Yeah, it's a really hot topic at the moment, isn't it? And it's something that I know is concerning some teachers. We are trying to support in the best way that we possibly can. And one of the ways that we're doing that is by producing a D&T specific guide for the use of AI in your classrooms. So this is something that we've been working on with Trudy Barrow, who is a real expert in AI. And she has been working with us to come up with a document which I think will help to guide you through what to do with AI with your students, assuming that your school allows the use of AI in your classrooms, because actually some schools, there's a variety of policy on that. But if your school does allow AI, then it's something that we don't discourage. We're very happy for students to use AI as long as it is documented. Now, I'm not going to get into massive detail there because we've only got a few minutes, but essentially what you need to think of with the use of AI is that students can only get marks in their NEA for things that they have done themselves. So if they are using AI, that's absolutely fine, but they won't get the marks for something that AI has done for them. So you can often use AI for getting people off the starting block. So if you've got students that are struggling with a certain aspect, or you want them to be able to see some of their creativity in a physical form, then you might use AI to kind of bring their ideas to life. That's great. And it's a great way to inspire students. But we need to be really, really careful that we are not crediting students for the work that they haven't done themselves to maintain the integrity of the qualification. So like I say, this document is about to be published on the website over the next couple of weeks, and that should help you. But we will also be running some sessions on how you might use AI in your classrooms and how you can protect yourselves and the integrity of the qualification, making sure that we're awarding the right marks to the right students. So watch this space on that one, really. I think it's going to become a really, really hot topic over the next 6 months to a year. I mean, it already is, but we will help to guide you through that. Okay. I think that might have covered most things. Oh, sorry, one more and then we will finish. So please combine sections C and D in the NEA. It would be much easier to assess as pupils naturally develop their ideas whilst they're generating. Do you know what? I completely agree. I think that is a really, really good idea. It's really hard, isn't it, to separate the two things out. So we will be looking at all different ways that we can mark our NEA. We don't know what that looks like yet, but that particular issue that you've just pointed out will be something that we will look into for sure. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of time, and I certainly don't want to delay anyone on a night like tonight. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar. We will be publishing the webinar, so anybody that would like to circulate that with colleagues who haven't had the chance to attend today, then please do that. I think we're hoping that that will be published over the next week or so. Yes, you can rewatch bits or send on to other colleagues. Also, like I mentioned before, if there are any questions that haven't been answered yet, we're very happy to send out a bit of an FAQ sheet. So we will let you know about that as well. Thank you again for joining us today, and I hope that has been useful for everyone.